Hi, I'm Vale.
I'm Marianne.
I'm Grace.
And this is not Crash Course U.S. History. She just really loves Crash Course.
I do, though.
Today, we're going to talk about how effective the methods of nonviolent resistance were in the women's reproductive and sexual rights movements.
The nonviolent movements on women's reproductive and sexual rights led to the way women are taking action about birth control, abortion, rape, slut-shaming, and the Free the Nipple campaign.
Before we start talking about what's happening now, we should probably talk about the background so that we can see where all this stuff is coming from. So in the 19th century, women in the US were considered men's property. As John Green said in his Crash Course US video, Women in the 19th Century, the job of women was to enable their husbands to make stuff by providing food and a clean living space. And then, of course, they weren't allowed to vote because they weren't allowed to own land. And if you didn't have any land, you weren't allowed to vote. So nope, no voting for them until 1920. And then sex, oh my goodness, I've said the S word. Yeah, no sex for them either. Women were meant to be kept pure until they were in possession of a man, in which case they couldn't be dirtied because men were so clean, even though all the women did all the cleaning in the house. And because the idea that women purely belonged to men was so strong, people were absolutely shocked with the possibility that women could have any sense of sexuality or want to control their frequency of birthing humans. Birth control movement became increasingly important as women began working outside of the house in the late 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. There were protests with well-known figures like Margaret Sanger and Emma Goldman who wanted to say in when they were going to be pregnant or not and how many children they were going to have. And this movement was super important for three reasons. One, it placed women in a situation where they were constantly testing the idea of free speech in America. Two, it was considered a public health issue because it involved half of the population. And three, it cut across all class lines. It mattered to every woman. By the end of the 1970s, birth control was made legal for all women through court cases that were taken up to the Supreme Court. Now, that may seem like the end of that story, but the topic still remains an issue that we're still discussing today. There was the Women's March on Washington that happened on January 21st, 2017. People were protesting against President Donald Trump's views on birth control and abortion, in which it will make it more difficult for women to have access to them and probably lessen the quality in medical facilities. People were also wearing pink pussy hats, which was an allusion to the video that surfaced with President Trump pretty much saying that he could do whatever he wanted to women because he had a celebrity status. And that, my friends, brings us to rape. Rape has been a conflict that has haunted men and women for years, but the ones who suffer it most are usually women. 1 out of 6 American women have been a victim, while 1 out of 10 men have been a victim of sexual assault. Before, it wasn't even considered a crime. Women weren't allowed to talk about it because it was scandalous. On the bright side, though, women have slowly gained more confidence. On the dark side, now the problem's more about who takes the blame. Women are constantly attacked for being the cause of forced sex. First of all, people think that if someone's wearing a provocative or revealing clothing, it's a way of saying, yes, sex me now. Second of all, if they act flirtatiously or talk in a sexual tone, men consider it an act of asking for it. And third of all, if they're intoxicated by any type of drug or alcohol, it's easier to blame women because they weren't capable of saying no. One reason people, including women, blame other women is to distance themselves from such an unpleasant thing and to confirm their own invulnerability to the risk. People reassure themselves by labeling or accusing other women. Because I'm not like her, because I don't do that, this would never happen to me. We need to help people understand that this is not a helpful reaction. And that's why there's been multiple campaigns, including a very famous one in South America called Ni una más, ni una menos, which supported victims of sexual assault and fought against femicide. Not to mention, some rape victims are afraid to speak up because they're scared of being labeled sluts. Slut shaming is one of the many ways women are put down. Women that have multiple sexual partners in their lives are called sluts. But men who get laid often are looked up to. People are working to get the discussion on slut shaming going, especially on large platforms like YouTube and social media. There's the hashtag I'm more than a distraction, and then other campaigns that work against slut shaming. Then there's Laci Green on YouTube who makes a ton of videos on this kind of stuff. She talks about these kind of topics and educates her viewers on these kind of issues. She says that one of the ways to slut shame is through dress codes at school. And that's kind of ironic because education is what could fix all of these kinds of problems. Speaking of what women choose to wear and not wear, Free the Nipple is a movement that began in 2012, where women would participate in protests with nothing to cover their chests. Across the US, only 16 states allow women to go topless. However, the laws that apparently say that a woman can't go topless are pretty vague, saying that the exposure of intimate parts is illegal, leaving it to the officers to really decide what's illegal and what's not. Banning nipples across social networks like Instagram only makes the problem worse. As Taryn Hillin says, are women's breasts inherently sexual, or has our culture sexualized them? Emma Watson was featured in a Vanity Fair magazine where one of the images of her were called controversial. Some people claim that she wasn't a real feminist because she was showing parts of her breasts and therefore she was sexualizing herself. Watson responded,
"Feminism is about giving women choice. Feminism is not a stick with which to beat other women with. It's about freedom. It's about liberation. It's about equality. I really don't know what my tits have to do with it."
Miss Grace, so how effective were the nonviolent methods?
Well, it was super effective. Women's rights have improved a lot. But just because it's gotten better doesn't necessarily mean that there's nothing left to improve.
As we strive for improvement, new things are going to come up that we're going to have to overcome. And we've come so far over the last 100 years with the nonviolent protests. Imagine how far we can get with the reach of the internet and social media at everyone's disposal.
Feminism is all about equality. It's not about putting women or men down in order to gain power. It's about having the same opportunities and respect that everyone deserves in every part of their lives.
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe down below.